Hello, today we are going to discuss is about microcontroller and embedded system model question paper 1 module 1. Let's get into the solving of first A question. Compare between microprocessor and microcontroller. 4 marks. They have asked this question. Let us see the differences now. Microprocessor, microcontroller. First difference is all the components RAM, ROM, input, output connected externally to the CPU. So any component might be that will be external to the CPU, whereas in microcontroller all the components like RAM, ROM, IO will be connected internally to CPU. Meaning internally means it will be within the CPU, whereas in microprocessor all these components will be outside of your CPU. What is CPU? Central Processing Unit. Second point is power consumption is high. Why? Power consumption will be high because externally you are connecting many devices. So each device may take some power. Therefore, power consumption is high. In microcontroller, power consumption is low because all the devices will be within the CPU and it may take less power. High cost. Microprocessor will be expensive. Why? Because everything you have to take externally. You have to take RAM, ROM, input output device along with the CPU. Whereas in microcontroller everything will be inbuilt. So it will be low cost. So the application of microprocessor will be like it will be in photo editing, video, etc. Whereas in microcontroller the application will be in washing machine, micro oven. Okay. Microprocessor is not predefined. It is not predefined. It is not pre-programmed. Whereas microcontroller it is predefined. So in microprocessor more of set instruction will be 32-bit or 64-bit. That is, whatever the instruction will try to give in microprocessor, it can be 32 bits and 64 bits. Whereas in microcontroller, three kinds of modes will be using to give the instruction. It can be 32-bit, 16-bit or 8-bit. 32-bit means it is ARM processor. 16-bit means thumb and 8-bit means we call it as Jazzle. The 7th point is 32-bit microprocessor can handle 32-bit of data at the same time. So this microprocessor maximum how much it can handle at a time, it can handle 32-bit of data. Whereas here 8-bit microcontroller can handle 8-bit of data at the same time. As you know that here it is 32 and 64, whereas in microcontroller it can start from 8-bit itself. 8-bit, 16-bit and 32 bits. Okay. So where do we store the data? Here the stored in storage, secondary storage device like hard disk. Whereas in microcontroller we use flash memory, which is long life and non-reliable. That is the advantage in the microcontroller. Okay. Then, so here we know that in a program we have two kinds of instruction. It can be code. One is code. One more is data. Single memory will be stored. Single memory will be used for code and data in microprocessor, whereas in microcontroller separate memory. For code will use separate memory, for data will be using separate memory. This is microprocessor is large in size. Why? Because all the component like RAM, ROM, input output devices are externally connected and it will be huge. So larger in size, whereas microcontroller everything is inside a one single chip, therefore the size will be smaller in size. Here in microprocessor interface high speed Ethernet. Okay, whereas in microcontroller interfaces SPI, serial peripheral interface, and UART. UART is used for parallel. Okay, so that is how we do the interfacing. In microprocessor, the clock speed will be from 1 gigahertz to 4 gigahertz, whereas in microcontroller the clock speed is 1 megahertz to 300 megahertz. In microprocessor, RAM will be from 512 MB to up to 32 GB you can use the RAM, whereas in microcontroller it will be in terms of KB only, kilobytes only. RAM 2 KB up to 256 KB. From this we can make out that microprocessor can have higher amount of it can store more, that is MB is greater than KB, right? Yes. In microprocessor, ROM will be, it can be from 128 GB up to 2 TB you can have. TB means terabyte, whereas in ROM it is 32 KB, 32 kilobyte up to 2 MB itself, so it is very minute, that is minimal. Microprocessor is a general purpose device, say digital computer. It is a very general purpose, it is almost for everyone, they can use in such a way it will be designed, whereas the microcontroller, it is a special purpose device for one particular concept only we have to use, or only one particular thing. It is specially designed, special purpose device, say digital controller. Here in microprocessor has many opcodes for moving data from memory to CPU. Many opcodes will be having. Opcode, what is opcode? You would have studied in a CO and all, some operational code will be there. In microprocessor we'll have many opcodes, whereas in microcontroller we'll have only 1 or 2 opcodes for moving data from memory to the CPU. In microprocessor, it requires additional ports for operation. Any operation, if you would like to do it, you need some additional ports. Whereas in microcontroller, nothing you can do because everything is inside the chip, right? So nothing called as ports or externally connecting, nothing as such. So no additional ports for the operation. In microprocessor, only few instructions are conditional. We don't go for much of conditions. Here only few instructions will be for conditional, whereas in the microcontroller all instructions are conditional. Why it is conditional? Because it has to check whether it is 32-bit or 16-bit or 8-bit. You know that ARM is a 32-bit, thumb is 16-bit and Jazelle is 8-bit. So firstly it has to check what kind of instruction we are giving. Is it 32-bit or 8-bit or 16-bit? So the access time for memory and IO device are more. Why the access time is more? Because it is externally connected, it takes some time. Whereas in microcontroller, access time for memory is very less. Few pins are multifunctional. So a few pins will be multifunctional. We have dedicated pins for each and every thing, whereas in microcontroller more pins are multifunctional. One thing, since it is a smaller one, we will try to club into the one thing and make it more multifunctional. So the best application in the microprocessor is it is used when large embedded software has to be located in external memory. There might be the case where externally you would like to join it externally you have to use it. In such cases we'll go with the microprocessor, and if you want it is used when the microcontroller, it is used when small embedded software has to be located in the internal memory chip. That is, if you want have a very minimal kind of software is required, then we'll go with the microcontroller.